New York, at dinner time, Manhattan, aglow with lights. At its heart, the Gilded Spoon restaurant sparkled like a jewel box on the street. Inside, wealthy guests laughed, clinked glasses, flaunted leather wallets, and luxury watches. The sound of but just beyond the kitchen door, that glittering world, vanished. Here, chefs and servers strained their faces in a frantic race against order times, against shouting voices, against the weight of dozens. Outside, Julian Croft's black sedan sat quietly, by the curb headlights off, but the interior light glowing. Julian Croft, 53, wore a worn wool coat and sat in the back seat. On his lap rested a tablet displaying financial reports from the Gilded Spoon branch. High profits, customer ratings excellent, but the highest employee turnover rate in the entire Aura Group chain. Employee satisfaction near rock bottom. He tapped the screen, flipping through each chart. An image of his late wife flickered across his mind, followed by something his father, an immigrant chef with nothing used to say, "Look at the kitchen and into the eyes of the servers." That's how you know if a restaurant is real. Julian shut the tablet with a sigh. He reached toward the front seat, grabbed an old baseball cap, and adjusted the frayed collar of his sweater. In the mirror, Julian was no longer the billionaire founder of Aura Group. He was Leo, a tired old man, slightly stooped with worn-down shoes, just trying to find a small job to escape the emptiness left after his wife's death. He opened the car door and stepped onto the street. Honking cars, New York's chilly night wind, and the scent of food from the restaurant door stung his eyes slightly. Julian knew he was about to face the ugliest truth hidden behind the shiny shell he once took pride in. But only by walking in himself could he see just how rotten things had become. He tightened his shoelaces, straightened Leo's hunched posture, took a deep breath, and stared at the golden-lit sign that read, "The Gilded Spoon." He whispered, "Don't let me down again." Julian pushed the door open and stepped into the gilded cage he had built with his own hands. Leo pushed open the door to the Gilded Spoon. A small bell above the entrance chimed softly, but no one turned around. No greeting, no welcoming glance. At the center of the main hall, Marcus Thorne, the restaurant manager, stood by the bar in a perfectly pressed gray suit, his cufflinks gleaming with the logo of an expensive brand. He was shaking hands with a group of VIP guests, smiling as if everything under his command was flawless. Marcus's eyes flicked past Leo with a quick, contemptuous glance, then turned away immediately as if the old man were nothing more than a speck of dust on the restaurant's polished wooden floor. Julian, as Leo chose a table, tucked away near the back of the room. He sat down, leaned back in his chair, and scanned the surroundings. The crystal chandelier overhead sparkled, casting reflections across the faces of diners who laughed, sipped wine, and ordered steaks worth hundreds of dollars. From the kitchen in the back, he could hear the clatter of knives and cutting boards and staff being shouted at. A figure slipped by light as air. It was Elena Ortiz. She wore a neat black server's uniform, her hair tied up high, her white apron sharply pressed, and flat rubber-soled shoes that made no sound. Elena moved quickly, her hands deftly placing glasses, wiping water stains, pulling out chairs, and adjusting cutlery. She handled 3 tables on her own, while still balancing a tray of drinks on her shoulder. Julian watched her closely. In contrast to the chaotic atmosphere, Elena moved like a ballet dancer, each step graceful, every motion precise. But behind her deep brown eyes, there was a trace of fatigue that couldn't be hidden. When Elena reached his table, she gave a slight bow, her smile just enough. "Good evening, sir. I'm Elena. I'll be serving your table tonight. What can I get for you?" Her voice was soft, neither forced nor cold, and not syrupy like the tone Marcus had just used to flatter the VIPs. It was genuine respect, not calculated. Julian glanced at the menu for a second, then closed it. He smiled faintly, shoulders slightly trembling like an unsure old man. "I'd just like a cup of coffee, whatever's cheapest." Elena was momentarily surprised, then nodded and jotted it down quickly in her notepad. Just as she turned to leave, Julian asked slowly, "In a fancy place like this, I bet the tips are good, huh?" Elena's step faltered for a beat. Her back straightened just a little, then settled again. She turned her head, her lips curling into a thin smile. But Julian saw it clearly. That smile didn't reach the eyes, which carried a hint of bitterness. "Tips are pooled, sir, but not everyone gets a share." The words were light, almost casual, but they struck Julian like a hammer to the head. His chest tightened. This young woman had just unwittingly revealed the dark artery pulsing beneath the restaurant's golden glow. Eleanor bowed and moved on to tend another table. Julian sat still, fingers tapping softly on the table. Data lies. People don't. And with just one sentence from Elena, he knew the truth was even uglier than the numbers had warned. The cheap cup of coffee was set down in front of Leo. Julian took a sip, his eyes fixed on the bar and the POS area. Every move Marcus and Kyle made fell into his field of observation like a chess game where the cheaters were about to be exposed. Marcus stood beside a regular guest's table, hands clasped warmly, bowing slightly, grinning as if everything under his control was perfect. He leaned in to whisper a joke into the guest's ear, triggering a wave of hearty laughter across the table. Every handshake was followed by a hefty bill signed without a second thought. A few meters away, Kyle Marcus's nephew stood behind the POS station. His white shirt was loosely buttoned, tie, crooked eyes glued to his phone, fingers lazily swiping through the screen with no regard for the line of guests waiting to pay. A new employee, still baby-faced and nervous, accidentally spilled a glass of red wine onto a guest's expensive dress while carrying a tray. A low murmur rose in the air. Marcus shot the employee a cold, sharp glance, then turned away. Not a word of reprimand, not a hand lifted to help. Elena appeared instantly, dabbing the stain with a white cloth, apologizing profusely. Julian saw the flicker of sadness in her eyes as she bent down. In the end, the one who worked the hardest was the one who paid the price. He turned his attention back to Kyle. Every credit card payment passed through him. Julian watched carefully. When a customer paid, Kyle moved quickly, fingers dancing across the screen, but there were moments when he tapped into a separate command, a hidden menu flashing briefly before disappearing. A group of young customers tipped via card. Kyle took the money, nodded, grinned sheepishly, and slid the card into the reader. Julian narrowed his eyes, watching every move. The POS system had been developed by the Aura Group itself. Every transaction left a trace, but Kyle was clearly accessing something only high-level admins could see. Julian lifted his coffee cup, playing the part of a harmless old man. When it came time to pay, he deliberately tipped $50 on the card, a much larger amount than usual. Kyle glanced at the screen, his lips curling into a smug smile. He tapped a few commands, swiped the card, and the receipt printed. Julian discreetly checked it. There was no line item showing the tip. Kyle crumpled the receipt, stuffed it into his pocket, and bid him a fake cheerful goodbye. "Thank you, sir. Have a great evening." Julian stepped out the door without a word. In his mind, the images he had just witnessed aligned into a clear, logical sequence. Marcus was the ringleader, Kyle the accomplice, and together They were skimming off the labor of people like Elena through systemic tricks. On his way out, he spotted Elena wiping down a table, a few strands of hair falling loose, but her eyes still lit with focus. A flicker of determination flashed through Julian's gaze. Tonight, he had seen more than enough. Julian stepped out of the restaurant, standing under the awning to shield himself from the night wind. His eyes remained fixed on the window, where Elena was still diligently wiping down tables. He knew she understood everything better than anyone, but why was she silent? Julian lit a cigarette, but extinguished it before taking a single drag. He turned around and walked back inside. He couldn't leave yet, not before speaking to her. Inside, Elena was cleaning the table he had just sat at. She neatly arranged the silverware and wiped a coffee stain off the gleaming surface. Julian approached her, clearing his throat softly. Elena, startled, looked up, a flicker of worry on her face, before she quickly composed herself. "Did you forget something, sir?" she asked, her voice quiet but clear. Julian nodded and pulled out a chair, sitting down and lowering his voice like an old man seeking advice. "Young lady, if you weren't here, this place would fall apart, wouldn't it?" Elena froze slightly. Her eyes darted toward the bar, where Marcus was chatting with a fur-clad couple, then flicked over to Kyle, hunched over his phone. Elena lowered her voice to a near whisper. "You know, even if you speak up, no one believes you. They'd fire me before anyone checks the facts." She tightened her grip on the cleaning cloth, then, as if reaching a decision, bent down and pulled a worn black notebook from the pocket of her apron. She discreetly placed it on the table, hiding it beneath a tray of spoons. "This is all I have. Please, don't let anyone see it." Julian lifted the tray and glanced quickly. The first page listed working days, table numbers, customer tips, and actual received amounts. The final column was almost always zero. In the margins were short notes. Kyle said the system glitched. Marcus promised to fix it. The paper was stained with grease, some corners smudged with coffee, but the handwriting was neat and aligned, meticulous, like Elena herself. Julian flipped through more pages, his heartbeat quickening. This wasn't just a notebook. It was an undeniable indictment. Elena looked around, her voice slightly trembling. "I didn't keep this to demand more money. It's just, my son asked me, 'Why do you work so much but still seem sad, still tired?' I needed to know I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining things." Julian closed the notebook and handed it back to her. His hand trembled slightly, but his eyes burned with clarity. "You've done well, Elena. Better than anyone." She hurriedly tucked the notebook into her apron, holding it close like a talisman. "Thank you for listening. But please, don't tell anyone." Julian stood up, and for the first time all evening, his shoulders straightened and his gaze sharpened. He gently placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder and spoke just loud enough. "You're not crazy, but someone else will be after tonight." With that, Julian walked toward the door, leaving Elena standing still, watching him go, her heart tangled between fear and a flicker of fragile hope. The storm was coming, and this time it would sweep away those who had turned her hard work into their private treasure chest. Julian left the Gilded Spoon no longer with the hunched posture of an old man. His steps were heavy, but resolute. He slipped into the black sedan parked at the corner, shut the door, and pulled out his phone. He dialed a familiar number. The voice on the other end picked up before the second ring. "Anya Sharma here, sir." Julian didn't waste time with pleasantries. Anya code read, "Gilded Spoon branch. Check all POS systems, admin permissions, and tip transaction histories. I suspect manipulation, embezzlement. Start now. No leaks." A 1-second silence followed. Then the sound of rapid typing erupted through the line. Understood. Activating the covert operations room. Give me 10 minutes to unlock root access. Julian ended the call. He leaned back in the seat, eyes closed. The tablet on the passenger seat lit up, displaying the Aura Group logo. At the same time, just a few blocks away, Anya Sharma and her cybersecurity team sat in a sealed conference room, soundproof glass walls, an entire wall covered in LED screens. On the monitors, dozens of data windows streamed open, financial reports, system permission maps, transaction logs, payrolls. Anya wore a headset, fingers flying across her keyboard. Unlocking the POS system, Manhattan branch. Got it. Marcus Thorne's senior manager has the authority to create hidden menus. Kyle Thorne, access manually altered. Another technician chimed in. There's a Ghost Admin account, Ghost Admin 1. Has the right to edit tip logs and hide transaction histories. Anya narrowed her eyes. Trace the money flow. On the screen, a spiderweb of red lines mapped the cash trail from the POS to a company called Thorne Hospitality Services, LLC. Check business registration, Anya commanded. 3 seconds later, a company profile appeared. Owner, Marcus Thorne. Address, virtual office, no employees. Linked bank account, Cayman Islands. Fake employees too. She pointed at the payroll records. 4 individuals, no personnel files, no social security numbers, yet receiving regular salaries. Monthly totaled $12,000 withdrawn. Anya turned toward the conference camera, locking eyes with Julian, who now appeared via video link. Mr. Croft, this is organized embezzlement, criminal level. The evidence is airtight. What are your orders? Julian didn't blink. His voice was steel. We don't call the police. Not yet. Tomorrow night, peak hour, I'll return. Marcus will bow his head before every customer and employee in that room. Anya nodded, arms crossed. I'll prepare the full report. The POS system will be restored to its original state overnight. As for Marcus, he won't realize he's been stripped bare until it's far too late. Julian closed the tablet. His eyes burned with fire. Elena's apron notebook was just the spark. Anya and her lines of code were the gasoline. The whole castle of lies Marcus had built would burn to ashes within hours. He pressed the button to lower the car window. The night wind swept in. Julian took a deep breath. New York's air was still thick and grimy, but to him it had never felt cleaner. Friday night peak hour. The lights inside the Gilded Spoon reflected off the gleaming hardwood floors. Expensive steak dishes flowed steadily from the kitchen. Marcus, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, strode through the restaurant like a king among his busy staff. Kyle manned the POS, face buried in his phone, occasionally glancing toward the bar with a look of boredom. The glass doors swung open. A gust of night wind swept through the main hall. Instinctively, every head turned. Julian Croft entered. No longer the hunched old Leo. He wore a finely tailored gray suit, a neat black tie, and his eyes were sharp as blades. Close behind him was Anya Sharma, a glowing tablet in her hands. Marcus turned. His smile froze mid-gesture. He made to step forward, but Julian's eyes stopped him in his tracks. Kyle looked up, his face drained of color. Murmurs rippled through the dining room. Julian didn't offer a single pleasantry. He walked straight to the bar and placed a firm hand on the polished wood counter. Marcus. His voice was clear, not loud, but it sliced through the room like a knife. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing a twisted smile. Mr. Croft, I didn't know you'd be coming unannounced. Julian didn't reply. He pointed at Anya. She held up the tablet toward Marcus. On screen was a detailed map of financial flows, every stolen tip, redirected through the shell company Thorn Hospitality Services. The numbers were undeniable. For the past 6 months, 68% of tips never reached the staff. Julian said, his tone steady, but each word cutting like steel. Instead, it went straight into your ghost company, and you created 4 phantom employees to siphon off another $12,000 per month. Marcus opened his mouth, but only stammered incoherently. Julian didn't give him the chance to spin lies. I've always been proud that Aura Group stands for respect. You turned it into a family playground where your nephew could run wild. Kyle stuttered, trying to object, but Anya swiped to another screen. Full transaction logs, hidden admin access, Marcus's digital signatures, all plain as day. Staff began murmuring, some behind the counter. Gasped, staring at Marcus like a monster in a suit. Julian pointed squarely at Marcus and Kyle. His voice rang firm like a gavel. "You're both fired. Immediately." He gestured. 2 internal security officers entered from the door and grabbed Marcus and Kyle by the arms. Marcus struggled and shouted, but no one listened anymore. Julian turned to Eleanor, who had been frozen by table 12, still holding a tray she hadn't set down. He gave a nod and said loudly for all to hear, "Ortiz, your integrity saved the soul of this place. From today, no one will dare look down on people like you again. Thank you." The restaurant went silent for a moment. Then a server holding a tray clapped once, then twice. Then the entire kitchen bar and dining room erupted into thunderous applause. Amid the storm, Elena clutched her tray, eyes brimming with tears. She knew tonight justice had won. The kind of justice she once believed was the most luxurious thing in this gilded cage. Marcus and Kyle were dragged out the front door like 2 rats just torn from their polished disguises. No one stopped them. A few employees even hid quiet, satisfied smiles. Julian stood in the center of the dining hall, adjusted his tie, and spoke with calm, steady authority. "Starting tonight, the Aura transparent tip distribution system will be activated here." Anya stepped forward, holding up her tablet for everyone to see. A new interface, simple and transparent, showing tips per table, who served which guests, and exactly how the money would be split. Everything would be displayed on a large screen above the bar. No more hidden menus, no secret commands, no ghost admin privileges. Julian turned to Elena, his tone firm like a command, but filled with trust. "Ortiz, I want you to temporarily oversee this. No one understands fairness here better than you." Elena's eyes widened, still gripping her tray. The other staff looked at her, their expressions transformed, no longer pity or disregard, but genuine respect. A young server stepped timidly out from the line, looked at Elena, and murmured, "Thank you, Elena." The entire atmosphere felt scrubbed clean of its old, stale air. The kitchen eased its tension, and the bar rang with laughter. Everyone could feel it this time. They no longer had to fear being robbed by those above them. Julian smiled. A piece of trust had been restored, and he knew it now rested safely in the hands of decent people like Elena Ortiz. 1 month later, the Gilded Spoon was no longer a gilded cage burying the sweat of its servers. Near the bar, a large screen hung high, glowing bright staff names, the tables they served, the tips each one received, all displayed publicly in real time. Every time a customer tapped the tip button, everyone could see exactly whose hands the money landed in. Staff smiled more now, no longer haunted by the threat of invisible hands dipping into their earnings. Turnover rates dropped sharply, and regulars began returning, drawn to the lighter atmosphere and the warmer, more spirited service. In a small meeting room on the second floor, Elena stood before a group of new hires. She no longer wore an apron. Pinned to her shirt was a new name badge, Elena Ortiz, Regional Training Manager. She spoke slowly, her voice steady. "I'm not here to teach you how to bow your heads. I'm here to teach you how to stand tall." The young faces before her looked up with hope. They had heard her story about the old apron notebook. It was now neatly wrapped and placed in an envelope, labeled for the next one. That afternoon, Julian returned, sitting once again at the old table by the window. Elena no longer served tables, but as she walked by, she paused and gave him a small nod. No words were needed. That nod said everything. Before he left, Julian left a generous tip and a neatly folded note. "Thank you for reminding me why I started." Elena opened it and smiled a real heartfelt smile. She knew then, justice doesn't happen by chance. It needs people brave enough to stand up and protect it. The Gilded Spoon is not just a story about a luxury restaurant. It is proof that fairness never arrives on its own, not unless someone dares to rise up and demand it. Julian had the power, but Elena was the heart that kept the soul of this place alive. No matter who you are, sometimes one small act, the courage to speak up, the will to preserve the truth, is enough to spark a change far greater than you can imagine. If this story restored a bit of your faith in what's good, share it, let others be inspired too. And don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story to follow more journeys where justice and kindness fight their way back into the world.